Hey, I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. We're about a third of the way into the Halloween season. I've been watching lots of horror films. I hope you have been too. And today we're going to talk about another one, a new 4K UHD release of the 2010 remake, The Wolfman. This was put out by Universal Pictures and is a remake of the 1941 Universal classic, The Wolfman. This one stars Lon Chaney Jr. and Claude Rains. Claude Rains gets top billing even though he's not the Wolfman. This one stars Benicio del Toro as Lawrence Talbot Jr., who becomes the Wolfman, and his dad is played by Anthony Hopkins. It also has Emily Blunt and Hugo Weaving in it in supporting roles. So as I said, this is a new Scream Factory release. I bought this directly from the Scream Factory site in a bundle that included the two posters that you see behind me. It also included this alternate slipcover, which is pictured here on this poster. This is a new artist rendering of the poster, but this is the original slipcover that will also come with it, and this is the one you will get if you can order this from their site just with this slipcover too. But if you order it off of Amazon right now, you will get this slipcover. I think after around 30 days, the slipcover is not guaranteed, and you'll end up just with this. You may end up with this, but you might still get the slipcover. I'm actually more familiar with, this is an older Blu-ray version of the film that I have, and I'm more familiar with this one that has the faces, stacked faces on it, which I kind of like. I like seeing all the cast on the front. You can identify as Anthony Hopkins and Benicio del Toro and Emily Blunt and Hugo Weaving. We're going to talk more about the transfer in relation to this Blu-ray later. Now, this is a 2010 Gothic horror film, and it came out roughly about 15 years after they did remakes of both Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula, were fairly large budgets. The budget on those two films were about $40 million each. Now, they went a little overboard with the budget here, and it was $150 million. I think they had to reshoot some things. I'm not sure, but it doesn't look any bigger than Dracula or Frankenstein to me. But I think they just had some problems during production, or maybe in that 15 years, inflation went up that much. The film didn't make its budget back. It came kind of close, but not enough. If it had the $40 million budget of those other two films, it would have made a lot of money, because it got about $140 million. Unfortunately, it didn't do too good. It didn't make it did good, but it didn't make its budget back. So yeah, so it kind of ended there. Now, later on, they did try to reboot Universal Studios with a shared monster universe called I think the Dark Universe, and it started with like a Tom Cruise movie called The Mummy, and it didn't do too good, so they had to stop that. But then later on, they did release an Invisible Man film that did decent because they kept the budget down. They didn't go overboard with the budget. So as far as the plot of this film, and it was very similar to the plot of the 1941, even though there are some differences that I'm going to talk about, that I think maybe they improved it a little bit with the story a little bit here than they did in the original. In the original, there's an estranged relationship between the father and the son, which causes some conflict. Here they kind of make it even more dramatic between that, and there's a good reason for it. So at the beginning of the film, Lawrence Talbot's brother Ben is killed by a werewolf, and then Ben's fiance there's two versions of this film here: the original theatrical version and an unrated, I think, director's cut version that has about 16 extra minutes in it. Now, it does some of the extra scenes actually cause some continuity errors, especially when it comes to the beginning of the story. Like, for example, in the unrated version, the extended version of the film, Emily Blunt's character comes to visit Lawrence Talbot, played by Benicio del Toro. He's in a play. He's playing Hamlet in a play, and she comes and visits him, and she tells him about that her husband, who's his brother, is missing, and she needs his help. And then she leaves. He says he doesn't go with her then, but then she leaves, and then he decides to go ahead and go. And so in the theatrical version, she writes him a letter, and he gets the letter and decides to go from there instead of her showing up. So I don't know how much that adds to it, and it does cause a continuity error because twice during the film there's mention of the letter that she wrote him, and there's not any mention of her going and seeing him. So they didn't fix the continuity. There's also a scene directly after this, which I think is a cool scene. On his way back to Talbot Manor, which is in Blackmore, England. On his way back there, he goes on a train and he meets a character played by Max von Sydow, who has Lawrence Talbert's cane. I mean, he has the cane with the wolf head on it that he ends up giving to Lawrence Talbert. So it shows you how he gets the cane. Now, I really loved seeing Max von Sydow in this part, and he knocked it out of the park like he typically did. But the problem is the scene's not needed. Because he gets, why do you need to know how he got the cane? And really, unlike the other movie, unlike the 1941 movie, the cane actually, he uses the cane more. And he actually, it's used a little bit in the other one, but he actually uses the cane in this film to kill the first werewolf, who's played by Bela Lugosi, and then he gets bit during that fight. But the cane isn't used in the same manner in this remake, and it doesn't have as much of a it doesn't have as much of an impact, and that was a really unnecessary scene, and I can see why they cut it. Now, so what happens next in the story? He gets to Talbot Manor, and he sees his dad, played by Anthony Hopkins, who's a little, he owns this big mansion type of house, but his dad's very odd acting. He's acting a little rough around the edges. He's almost dressed with furs and things of that nature. He's kind of half dressed nice, and then also there's some weird fur stuff going on, and he's kind of like a little bit on the edge. And he tells him that his brother Ben has been killed and he was mutilated, and then so he goes back to town to look at his brother's body in the morgue, and it's all chewed up. And so in this version, Lawrence Talbert's mother is dead. She was apparently, he thinks she died from suicide, but there's a flashback when he was a kid, and he sees his dad standing over her dead body. Now, in present day time, he decides he wants to go into town on the full moon to check out this Roman eye. I guess you would call it Roman eye, but in the original one, I think they called them gypsies, and that's apparently offensive now, I guess. I don't know, but they're fortune tellers and all that. But he goes to visit them, and while he's there, some police show up they have a bear there, and then the police show up to take the bear, thinking that maybe the bear's been doing the attacks on people. While that's happening, the werewolf shows up, and he starts killing everyone there. And Lawrence Talbot himself ends up getting bit, but he doesn't get killed. When he wakes up the next day, he begins to kind of do some werewolf transformation stuff starts to happen, because he doesn't turn directly into a werewolf yet, because that typically only happens on a full moon. So let's take a look at the inside of this. There's 3 discs. There's the 4K. This must be to me, when they put the one in front, that's the one they want you to watch. That's the unrated version, and then the theatrical version, and then there's a Blu-ray. Now, I did a comparison. This looks very good, by the way. As far as the clarity. The blacks look really dark. They look much darker than, I did compare it to this older Blu-ray. It looks so much better, and I thought this looked pretty good when I watched it. But the blacks are definitely darker and deeper, and the faces are sharper. There's more detail, and generally everything looks pretty cool. The film was, I think, it won an Academy Award for the special effects, which are quite nice. The werewolf makeup. Oh, there's 2 werewolves in the film, and they both look really, really cool. All right, now let's go ahead and take a look at the contents inside of this disc. As you've already seen this cover here. Now, by the way, there's not a reversible slip on here. It's just white on the back side. There's 3 discs, and the first one, typically when you open it, you're going to see this one first, which is the unrated extended version, which I think it has the extra content may, in some cases, add some character development, but I think generally some of them aren't. Most of the scenes in this one aren't needed, and the theatrical version may be the better version, which is on this other 4K disc here. Now, this is a Blu-ray that has both versions on it. It's just like crammed onto a Blu-ray, and then the special features. The transfer here is quite nice. Now, in comparison, I did take a look at I spot checked some of this in comparison to the older Blu-ray. Now, the blacks are much deeper in this 4K version. They look really nice, and everything as far as the clarity and just the details on the faces and the sharpness, it looks so much better in the 4K version than it does in the original Blu-ray. So this transfer is very nice. I'm gonna take a read here what they've done with the transfer. It just says new 2024 4K restoration. So it's not just a transfer, it's a restoration as well, and I really like what they've done with it. It looks very clean. Now, the special effects here are quite nice, and they were done by Rick Baker, who won an Academy Award for his work on this, for his prosthetic special effects work on the werewolves. But unfortunately, they are mixed with some CGI, and it is 2010, so it's kind of early CGI. It's not. It looks a lot better than I remembered it. I remember the first time I saw it, and CGI used to be like, when I saw that in a film, I'd be like, man, this sucks. But now I'm more used to it now, and I can accept it better. But it definitely doesn't look as good in this film as the newer CGI. But it's still good. It's passable, and it's really needed in some of the scenes with the werewolves, because you get the werewolf transformation and you have a werewolf fight, because there's two werewolves, which we'll get to later. Why there are two. Special effects, especially the practical special effects, even like there's a lot of like when the werewolves ripping people apart and doing all this gore stuff, all that looks really nice in this film, and a lot of it's done kind of in somewhat darkness, but you can still tell what's going on. You're never like trying to figure out what's up, but they do use, I mean, because as a werewolf, you're not a werewolf unless it's dark, so it's got to be dark. Now, the film here is directed by Joe Johnson, who directed Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and also Jumanji with Robin Williams, and he later would go on to direct one of the Marvel Captain America movies, Captain America: The First Avenger, and he does a good job here. There's not like a ridiculous amount of action in the film, but when there are action scenes, they do look good, and you really don't necessarily need to see that much action. It doesn't need to turn into what happens in Van Helsing, which was entertaining, but it doesn't. When the action to me goes on for too long, it kind of takes me out of any kind of build up of horror or scary type of stuff. I'm going to go ahead and talk about what the biggest difference in this film from the original, and kind of a cool twist in this one, where they have the father being the werewolf. So he was bitten on an expedition where he found a werewolf in a cave and it bit him, and that's how he transfers into the werewolf. He accidentally killed their mom, but the character's able to, he's got a chair, so he straps himself to this chair, or he gets the servant to help him, and then he locks himself inside of this gated room so he doesn't get out and hurt people. Since there was an accident the month before when he accidentally killed Lawrence Talbert's brother Ben, there was an accident where he accidentally escaped as the wolf, and then he went out and killed him. But ever since that happened, he's decided that he actually likes being the wolf. He likes the way it feels, and he thinks the wolf just needs to be unleashed. And the character is also somewhat, I guess, depressed, and he feels bad about killing both his wife and his son. And so he's kind of just over the whole thing, and he wants the wolf to just get out and kill people until the wolf is maybe killed. So he's kind of the villain of the story. Though the performances by both Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins are good, and also like Emily Blunt's performance as the love interest, who was his brother's wife, and now she's kind of got a connection with him. But I do like what she does in the film, and also like Hugo Weaving plays a police detective who comes into town, and he's investigating, and he kind of figures out what's going on, and he plays a fairly large part for that type of character in this film. But let's go ahead and rate the 2010 the Wolfman. Now, I'm gonna give this one. I'm gonna give it a. This is a tough one. I'm gonna give it 3.5 stars, leaning towards the 4 direction. I really like the movie. I think they kept the spirit of the original, and really this is an underrated film. It's better. I'm not sure why it doesn't quite click. I think maybe Benicio del Toro, he already kind of looks like a Wolfman beforehand, so he doesn't have the, a lot of times when you have this Wolfman character, you need him to be more sympathetic to begin with, and I don't get that type of vibe from him, though I think his performance here and his acting is terrific. But I just didn't get that likability factor from him that I think that you kind of need to have sympathy for the guy who becomes the Wolfman. At the same time, it is a nuanced performance because he's coming back into this town where his dad, he clearly doesn't like him, but he does have good chemistry with Emily Blunt, and you kind of do feel that connection they have between their characters. I'm going to give Scream Factory a 4 for their presentation. I'm not sold on this. I do like it that they had an alternate slipcover, but I don't really like it I don't like it better than the original. And it's kind of weird that I don't know I guess this is the house. I thought it looked a little bit like a bridge, but it is a bridge. So I don't know what exactly is going on in that poster, but the fact that they made the posters is cool, and I do like the alternate. It looks cool as an alternate slip on here, so that way you have the alternate and the original. In conclusion about the Wolfman, the Wolfman is generally a sympathetic character because he's not really at fault for being the monster he becomes, and he's not always the monster. He's only the monster during the full moon. And I remember when I was younger, I used to think, okay, well, you could just go through that month, and then just for those few days, whenever the full moon is, that's the only time you got to worry about it. But I mean, it's really, that would be overwhelming. I can imagine having to deal with that once a month, and then you, turn into a monster and having to be chained up all night. It would really mess up everything in your life, I would think. And I think the way it's often depicted in these is the character, even though they're not always the wolf, they have the wolf sensibilities, that they feel that aggression, that wolf aggression. But it's a very dangerous monster, even if it is only once a month, because something could happen like what happens in the film where he accidentally escapes and gets out and kills people, and then you wake up and you have to live with the consequences of what happened when you were the wolf. And it's almost like being completely drunk out of your mind, and you wake up and you don't remember it, and you're not necessarily, I guess you are responsible because you got drunk to begin with, but similar situation, kind of. Anyway, if you've seen this film, let me know what you think about it. And if you haven't done so already, if you'd like this video and subscribe to my page, I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.